With a mind map on regulation of heart rate, we have to look at the basic principles. So, regulation of heart rate basically refers to the mechanisms that control the frequency of cardiac contractions, and this regulation ensures that the heart meets the metabolic demands of the body at rest and during activity. The physiological importance is that it maintains adequate cardiac output and blood pressure and adjusts cardiac performance in response to exercise, stress, and other physiological changes, and also ensures synchronization between the electrical and mechanical functions of the heart. With intrinsic regulation, the sinoatrial node and the pacemaker activity are very important over here. And the primary pacemaker is the sinoatrial node, which is located in the right atrium, and it indicates the electrical impulse due to its inherent automatic nature or automaticity. The pacemaker potential um, to you have to think of his pole depolarization, which is characterized by gradual depolarization driven by funny currents or IF, primarily carried by sodium and modulated by T-type calcium channels. The threshold potential once reached triggers a rapid depolarization that is phase zero, primarily through the L-type calcium channels. And the intrinsic heart rate, um, in the absence of external influences, the sinoatrial node maintains a baseline heart rate, typically 60 to 100 beats per minute. And with the extrinsic regulation, the autonomic nervous system, whether sympathetic, parasympathetic uh, nervous systems are involved. So with the sympathetic, um, its effects, it increases heart rate, which is the positive chronotropic effect, and it enhances conduction velocity, which has to do with the positive dromotrophic effect, and contractility, which is positive inotropic effect. For the mechanisms, there's release of noradrenaline or norepinephrine, which binds to the beta 1 adrenergic receptors on the sinoatrial, nodal, and myocardial cells, leading to increased cyclic EMP and production. Cyclic EMP production. Now, the outcome is the accelerated phase 4 deuterization and the shortening the interval between heartbeats. With the parasympathetic nervous system, its phase is that it decreases heart rate, which is a negative chronotropic effect, and the conduction velocity, which is a negative dromotrophic effect, and um, especially through the AV node. For the mechanisms, there is release of acetylcholine, which binds to the muscarinic receptors, M2 receptors on the sinoatrial node, which increases um, potassium conductance and hyperpolarization of the membrane. The outcome is the slow heart rate of phase 4 depolarization, resulting in a reduced heart rate. With the reflex mechanisms, remember the baroreceptors. The baroreceptor reflex involves the sensor's response and has several clinical rules. So the sensors, the baroreceptors in the carotid sinus and the aortic sinus detect the changes in the blood pressure, and the response is that an increase in the blood pressure leads to enhanced baroreceptor firing, which stimulates the peripheral nervous system and inhibits the central nervous system, thereby reducing the heart rate. And clinical rule is that it acts as a rapid feedback mechanism to stabilize the blood pressure. The chemoreceptor reflex has to do with the senses and response to the senses. The peripheral chemoreceptors in the carotid and aortic bodies respond to changes in the blood oxygen, carbon dioxide, and pH levels. In response, hypoxia, hypercapnia, or acidosis can increase sympathetic activity, which in turn elevates heart rate. The hormonal and neuroendocrine influences can think of catecholamines, adrenal medulla, which releases epinephrine or adrenaline and norepinephrine into the bloodstream during stress or exercise. The effect on heart rate is that circulating catecholamines binds to beta 1 adrenergic receptors, enhancing the pacemaker activity of the sinoatrial node and increasing the heart rate. Other hormonal factors include thyroid hormones and ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide hormones. So the thyroid hormones Elevated levels of thyroid hormones, for example, in hyperthyroidism, can increase the heart rate by increasing sensitivity of the cardiac tissue to catecholamines. Atrial nitritic peptide is released from the atrial myocytes in response to stress, um, though primarily involved in blood volume regulation, may have indirect effects on the heart rate by modulating autonomic tone. With the modifying factors, exercise and physical activities are very important. Increased metabolic demands during exercise leads to enhanced sympathetic stimulation and um, reduced parasympathetic tone, resulting in tachycardia. With emotional and psychological stress triggers a fight or flight response by the sympathetic nervous system, elevating heart rate, and the temperature and metabolic changes in the body temperature and metabolic rates can alter the intrinsic pacemaker activity and the autonomic balance. So with the clinical implications, you can think of arrhythmias, heart rate variability, and therapeutic interventions. So with arrhythmias, there's regulation of the autonomic input can lead to arrhythmias such as inappropriate sinus tachycardia and bradycardia. And heart rate variability is a measure of the autonomic balance and is used clinically to assess the cardiac autonomic regulation. Reduced heart rate variability, or HRV, is associated with increased cardiovascular risk. The therapeutic interventions, pharmacological agents like beta blockers, anticholinergics can modulate autonomic input to manage abnormal heart rates. So, in summary, the intrinsic control, the sinoatrial nodes, automaticity, or autorhythmicity provide the baseline heart rates, and the extrinsic control, the autonomic nervous system through sympathetic and parasympathetic input modulates the intrinsic rates. The reflex mechanisms, the baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors provide rapid feedback adjustment. The hormonal influences, circulating catecholamines and thyroid hormones further adjust heart rates according to metabolic needs. And with the clinical relevance, understanding these regulatory mechanisms are very essential in managing conditions such as arrhythmias, heart rate, and other cardiovascular disorders.